Welcome back to another episode of Creative Day Tuesdays, where me, Jay and Cay talk about creative development and how to create a franchise in a universe. If you're liking content like this, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more content.
And also hit that bell so you guys can be notified when new videos get up.
Definitely. So for today's episode, I wanted to focus on Antman. I'd like to argue the underdog of the MCU.
Antman's my ninja. I love Scott. I love the way Paul Rudd portrays him. I think honestly Scott Lang was always one of my favorite Antmen, I guess, if that's how you want to call him.
Nobody likes Hank Pym. He's an asshole.
Yeah, no one likes the other guy. I think his name was like Eric or something. He was like the third Antman.
Who the fuck is that? See, your point exactly.
Exactly.
Your point exactly.
He was like the scummiest scumbag ever. He was like, you know.
I know. When they first announced this, I remember when they first announced this this film, we were talking about if this film would be successful because Ant-Man, up until the announcement of this film, hadn't been a really successful character because of Hank Pym.
Exactly.
And for those who don't know, Hank Pym is Ant-Man / Giant Man
/ Yellow Jacket
in the comics.
The Wasp. He's gone through so many.
Yeah, he's a character who has borderline personality disorder.
I think so.
And schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And now,
he's
mind
definitely
you,
off his rocker. That's for sure.
Yeah. Now, mind you, this isn't the same Hank that we see in the MCU. The Hank that we see in the MCU is far more level-headed, far more
watered down.
Yeah.
And I think it's, to me in my head, canon, even though it's Disney, I like to believe that young Hank was still kind of like comic accurate Hank, still an asshole, maybe a tidbit abusive.
Until he lost Janet.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the one thing I love about Marvel.
Like older age, like him being older now, he lost his wife and he ultimately lost his kid for a while.
Usually with Marvel's depictions of characters, you're able to tell, like pinpoint exactly where things like, you know, change for a character in their various incarnations and what makes them that way. But yeah, like I said, I know that we had originally thought that it wasn't going to actually be successful, but it ended up being a romantic comedy. Brilliantly done.
I wouldn't say a romantic comedy. I'd say more of
the romance side of things was definitely downplayed. But how I look at this film, I definitely see it as Marvel's first attempt at romance. In rom-com, because it focused so heavily on Scott and him learning how to become Ant-Man, but also his relationship with the Pyms and Hank Pym's daughter, where at the end he didn't really make that metamorphosis into Ant-Man until he got closer with her. Because it's like, think about it, in the first Ant-Man, it's her that actually genuinely helps him communicate with the ants, teaches him how to actually control the ants and do it as a more of a second thought instead of a first thought. Like, he's not concentrating as difficult. Like the car scene with both of them in the car where he finally gets the ant to spin the coin.
I mean, yeah, there's definitely hints of romance in this movie, but I wouldn't call it a rom-com for sure.
I only say
like Deadpool's more of a rom-com than this.
Well, definitely. You know, I would say that this is MCU's first rom-com only because for the storyline, it is such a heavy emphasis on the romance between the two characters. And this is furthermore put emphasis on with their sequel being a straight up rom-com, starring two romantic comedy actors.
Yeah, I'd say the sequel's definitely a rom-com.
And it's like, it's truthfully the first movie where it's about not just, because like, let's be honest, it's about both of them, not just Scott. And it's like, yes, the story focuses a lot on Scott and his family, but it's more so about Scott and his relationship with everyone around him and not just his relationship with his family, at least I think.
Well, yeah, but that backs up this movie being about Scott. I mean, like, I get what you're trying to say, but this movie definitely is Scott's movie.
Well, I'm not taking away from that. No, I don't want to confuse the viewers with that. But this, I believe, is definitely Marvel's first stab at romance outside of Tony and Pepper, which at this point, their romance was very dysfunctional.
I mean, yeah, Tony and Pepper was definitely the biggest romance in the MCU. But
and it's like when it comes down to like this is the second couple that we're seeing. We don't really get to see much of Captain America and Peggy after the first Captain America, and even in the first Captain America, there wasn't too many scenes with both of them being super coupley versus them getting the job done. Right. That's really what I think calls home to the Captain America character, because he is duty first. Right. Even if he's working with the love of his life, it's duty first. And it's like you get a completely like different change in tone and in everything with this Antman film, and that's what I'm trying to say. It's a little bit higher emphasis on relationships, a little bit higher emphasis on love, a little bit higher emphasis on not necessarily being the hero of the story, but being who you need to be so that you survive the next day. And I would say that Scott has very heroic tendencies, but one of the things that his film showed is that he has very selfish tendencies too. He has a tendency to go back into his selfish ways. And it's like, yeah, he had a very altruistic reason for, outing
Vistacorp?
And why he ended up becoming a criminal. Which
it was a very noble thing to do, but it's also very selfish. I get what you're trying to say. It was selfish in the fact that he had a wife at the time. He had a toddler, because Cassie at that time, I think he spent like 4 years in jail. Yeah. So Cassie at that time was no more than 2, maybe 3. Yeah. So by him, wanting to be a hero in his own right and doing what he did, ultimately it was a selfless and a selfish thing, because he put himself in a position to where he couldn't be able to provide for his family, to be there for his family and stuff like that. Yeah, and this film definitely introduces another
facet of the Marvel universe. Right. In another video, we'll see a whole new genre open up to us, Doctor Strange and magic. And up until this point, didn't exist. I believe Antman came out before Doctor Strange.
I believe so.
Doctor Strange came out 2016. I only remember that because it's my favorite movie. I can't recall when Antman came out.
I think Antman either came out 2015. I know it didn't come out. It could came out 2014 though. I don't think so. It was either 2015 or 2016 as well.
Yeah, I want to say that it may have actually came out around the same time. But up until this point,
the first Antman came out in 2015.
Yeah, 2015. Okay, so up until this point, we hadn't seen magic. And then also, the only things that we had seen up until this point was a soldier's perspective and a billionaire's perspective, a god's perspective because of Thor, and that was pretty much it in Guardians, because their movie came out in 2014. And it's interesting because one of the biggest ways in how you expand a universe, you don't throw every character in the same movie. That's not how you expand a universe. You expand a universe by picking I believe I said this in the previous videos, picking specific genres and who the head of that genre can be. You have Ant-Man, Hank Pym, a specialist in molecular science. He is the top in the field, where Tony Stark is a top in just weaponizing. He can weaponize anything. This is clearly he can weaponize anything, being that he had a box of scraps in a cave and was able to make his own perpetual energy source.
I love that line. I'm a butcher it right now, but it goes like, what do you mean you can't do it? Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
Yeah, and it just comes to show that the best way is you choose characters that introduce realities or perspectives that no one else would be preview to but through this character.
Yeah.
And anyone who falls in between the worlds, that's who you have as supporting cast. Mm-hmm. You have Scott Lang, a literal everyday guy who is as smart as any other person who has an IT, degree. Mm-hmm. You know how to hack, you know code, you know security protocols.
The one thing, and I guess they did this to make him a little bit more relatable, but the one thing I do kind of is a gripe with me is the fact that, to me at least, they seem to have really downplayed his intelligence. Because Scott, even though he's like the everyday guy, like the everyman, he is really intelligent in his own right.
I think that's only because he's around smart people or
super smart people.
Yes, super smart people. Because take how at Avengers, he was the first and only person to come up with the time heist. Mm-hmm. And the fact that his character thought of a way to weasel his way around the rules of time and around, he was like, well, what about this? Couldn't you guys figure this out? And it's like, oh, well, shit, duh. And that's where I kind of like Scott, because he's that everyday man's smart. It's like, why didn't you guys just do that? He's the audience.
Mm-hmm. And that is true.
And it's like...
he definitely is the audience. I say that for one. It's like a little, I wouldn't call it a throwaway line, but it's when they're going over the multiple time travel scenarios or whatever you want to call it, and they're naming off the movies and
Back
Banner,
to the Future.
Yeah, Banner's like, none of that's true. Blah 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 blah. And then in the background, Scott goes, so Back to the Future was bullshit. And it was funny because that was me in that literal moment, well, Back to the Future wouldn't have worked. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it just comes to show, you have to really know how to use your characters and stick to that. Even in his movie, he's the audience. Mm-hmm. And it's like when he's the main character, his friends are the audience for us. Mm-hmm. And they're reacting the way that we would react in that situation. And that's something that pulls so true and what makes his movie so great.
Right.
Because there's absolutely nothing relatable about a guy who could shrink to the size of an ant or grow to the size of a skyscraper. Mm-hmm. There's nothing relatable about that. But that relatability is brought into focus when he's just coming into this world and he's reacting to these new things and new ideas the same way we would.
Yeah.
And it's like going back to Hank Pym being a specialty in molecular science. He introduces the idea of the quantum realm. And Kevin Feige has already come out and said in recent months that the quantum realm is where it's at. It's very important in coming movies and everything outside of just Endgame and
the quantum realm. They already came out and confirmed that the quantum realm is MCU's version of the microverse. Mm-hmm. They can't use microverse because they don't own the term microverse. So they changed it to quantum realm. But in the comics, the microverse, everything, that's a way for you to get into the negative zone. Spider-Man got the Enigma Force from the microverse. Yeah. And all this other stuff. There's, civilizations down there. So, there's for the next couple phases, or they're not going to be phases anymore, but for the next 5 to 10 years, the microverse.
Antman might be a film that we get beyond 3 films. Just because of
I know they're saying right now, we don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, but Michael Douglas came out and said that he's been in talks with Feige and Upper Heads has been in talks. So something's gonna happen. Because I'm pretty sure we're gonna get Ant-Man 3. Like you said, we're gonna get past the 3rd film and stuff like that. But you just have to see. But I love this franchise. I love the character.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the idea. One of the things that right now what we're gonna do, since we're coming into about our 15-minute mark, we're going to take a bit of a break.
Little hiatus.
Yep. So this is part 1. Catch us in part 2.
Part dos.
If you're on YouTube, and if you aren't, then stay tuned.
Enjoy this little music in between.
Yep. This is part 2. So if you missed us out on part 1, just check the link below and click on the link and you'll find part 1. And part 1, in brief, we talked about Antman and essentially how adding his character added to the MCU. And essentially how I feel it was Marvel's first attempt at a romantic comedy without the heavy emphasis on romance. But it was more, as we came to an agreement with, it was more of a focus of relationship. You know, and the everyday man's, it's quite truthfully an underdog story.
Yeah, the reason why, and I guess I can, my kind of understanding of why you think that it's kind of like the first take on a romance film or a rom-com is, you know, this movie's really at its core just about family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, Hank is fighting to keep his family safe and to also get his daughter back spiritually and physically.
I forgot her name at the moment.
Janet.
I wanted to say Janet, but I didn't want to say Janet. No, Hope.
Hope.
Yeah, Hope.
It's Hope.
Yeah, and I would even argue like Ant-Man 1 was definitely like main cast is definitely Scott, but I would argue that Hope kind of teeters between main and support for the film. For the first film.
She's definitely yeah, I can back that. I would say she's like a high supporting.
Yeah.
You know,
like she's too important to not be a main, but it's like it's kind of like she's a main character, kind of like how there's no other good example that I can think of off the top of my head. She's a supporting character, but she's a main character too.
I think it just comes down to how you view the film. If you think that her role played a much more integral part than maybe the director or the writer intended for it to be, like if that's your interpretation, and if that's how you, as a viewer of the movie,
I wouldn't even argue that that's wrong.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, you know, like it's to the eye of the beholder. Like for me, she's definitely a supporting. I wouldn't go as far as saying that she's a main character. She's definitely a supporting character. I would say for me,
because she has a little mini arc in the film.
Scott and Hank are definitely main, and then maybe Cross because he's the villain.
Yeah, she gets more of her arc in the second film. Yeah, for sure.
She definitely gets her due in the second film. Like,
for sure.
It's so crazy how in the second film, she's like the highlight for me. Like Scott was perfect in the movie, but I just dug everything about Janet. I mean, Hope and Janet rather. Yeah, but definitely Hope. She's so badass in as Wasp, which makes me upset that she wasn't Wasp in the first movie. Yeah, but it makes me appreciate that they did it for the second one, and she got her own title card.
Because she would have definitely outshined Ant-Man. Because Wasp, even in the comics, was more interesting. So it's like it makes sense. Yeah, the way that they executed it, knowing that that Wasp is the more interesting character, they still went with making the uninteresting character as interesting as possible and doing that first.
And I totally believe her. Like if Scott would have taken her to fight with Cap against Iron Man, they would have got away. They would have got away.
They would have got away.
They would not have gotten caught. That's for damn sure.
That's for damn sure. She would have shrunk both of them and gotten out of there.
You got to get the hell on up out of here.
Yeah, they would have probably still been with Cap and them.
Yeah, most definitely.
Or rendezvoused with him, but you know.
That That'd have been cool. An alternate Secret Avenger had Wasp and Antman on it. That'd have been dope. That'd have been cool.
So where I ended off, now that we're like 4 minutes into this video, or into the second part, where I had ended off last part one was essentially the film introduces the idea, one, that anybody can be a hero, and two, passion can lead to corruption. And I say that in the instance of who they had as Yellow Jacket.
And Cross.
Yeah, and him being very passionate about Hank's work. But that passion led to obsession, which then further led to his corruption and hatred towards Hank for shutting him out. Mm-hmm. And ultimately was why he became the villain. Not very relatable, because not many people have that much passion, or have the resource to follow through with that passion,
right?
Like he did, which is why I feel that villain kind of fell through with some people.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, because for me, with him, you know, I've stated this to you before. He wasn't really one of my favorite villains.
Yeah.
He didn't really bring nothing to the table for me.
The actor was great.
The actor is a great actor. He's in one of my favorite movies, not a Marvel movie, This Is Where I Leave You.
Yeah.
I watched that movie like religiously.
Yeah.
You know I love that movie.
Yeah.
I love it's a great book as well. Mm-hmm. But to wrap it up, for me he was lackluster for me. It was, and I didn't even. It's funny that you bring that up because I didn't even see that. Yes, I seen that he was interested and obsessed with Hank's work, but to me it kind of, he had that living in the shadow mentality, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just like, I'm the assistant or the ward of Hank Pym. His shadow is overcasting me, and you know, he's out of the business now, so let me capitalize on this, and so it can be a straight big FU type thing. Like, that's kind of what I got from him.
And you know, on the surface, that's what I think it is. But his passion was to be Hank, and to be revered like Hank, to have his name on the building. Yeah, and
that's what I kind of mean by like living in the shadow kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's like, because he aspired to be like Hank, and Hank had grown away from that. Mm-hmm. And essentially because of his time as Antman and losing his wife.
And then like from ultimately having to lie to his daughter and lose his changed him, daughter. and
it ultimately changed him so much that he wanted to walk away from everything.
I mean, he definitely he became a recluse.
Yeah,
I mean, he stayed in that mansion. The beginning of the movie, or not the beginning of the movie, but when we see present day Hank, you know, the security guard didn't even recognize him. Yeah, this is a security guard that works at his business, at his company. Yeah, you telling me you don't recognize the CEO? Yeah, you know what I mean. So it definitely changed him. He definitely went into himself and just kind of secluded himself from the world. And
and it shows how much Janet's
hoped.
No, Janet's disappearance affected him.
Definitely.
And I say disappearance because in the first film, he believes she's died, but we'll find out in a second. Yeah. Not the case. Yeah. She just went subatomic and has been living in subatomic. The quantum realm. Yeah. But yeah, like I definitely see Yellow Jacket's initial passion. And it's apparent with how heavily he's going after this whole, like, I knew this was real kind of thing, because Hank is a smart guy, which means he didn't leave much of any evidence of the existence, and like S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't leave much of any evidence of the existence. The fact that this man was able to replicate the technology off the myth alone, from his passion, shows how intelligent he is and how devoted he is to becoming like Hank, and how much he looked up to Hank, or who he thought Hank was, despite all evidence, like, you know, turning against it. And to me, it seemed like it was like, as a kid, he grew up looking up to the idea of Antman as a hero, because I'm still confident that there was this whole era of lost heroes in the MCU that essentially nobody really knows about.
Because like redacted, forced to go into hiding.
Yeah.
Professor X mind wiped a grip of people, whatever the case may be.
I think it's going to be this whole huge thing. It could quite truthfully deal with the mutants. Never really thought about it in that detail, but it could quite truthfully deal with the mutants. But I'm pretty confident if Captain Marvel and S.H.I.E.L.D. were active, like, from the 40s and up to the 90s, and we know in the 40s that S.H.I.E.L.D. From Agent Carter, that television show, we know that in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that they've dealt with, like,
Well, that was the strategic, the SSR.
Yeah.
It was pre-S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, in Agent Carter, we know that she dealt with things that they dealt with in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which was present day.
Yeah, the strategic scientific reserve. That's what they were called before S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah. It's essentially like what did S.H.I.E.L.D. go through after S.H.I.E.L.D. was established? They didn't just do anything, because they were even somewhat prepared to deal with Captain Marvel, even though they were still ill-equipped to deal with Captain Marvel in her film. Because it's like they get a strange call about a person, an object, or a person falling through a roof of a building wearing a laser costume, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is immediately on top of it before authorities can even.
Right.
And I almost guarantee you that security guy called the police.
Yeah, most likely.
So, which means that they were somewhat prepared to expect fringe-like things, just not alien.
Yeah.
And that comes to show is what did they deal with in the past that made them so precautious.
Well, yeah, I watched both seasons of Agent Carter. The first season, to my knowledge, I can't really remember, but the second season, they had to deal with the dark matter and the dark matter dimension, which ties into Cloak and Dagger. That's Cloak's power. Is the dark matter.
And it's like they dealt with that in what, the 40s, 50s?
That was the late 40s, early 50s, I believe.
Yeah, so it's like from that time after her, because her show doesn't go on anymore, so it's after that time up until the 90s, we don't know what happened.
We know that S.H.I.E.L.D. officially forms in the 70s from Endgame.
Yeah.
So it's like from the 40s up into the 70s, we don't know what SSR had been doing, and then from the 70s to the 90s, we don't know what S.H.I.E.L.D.'s been doing.
Exactly.
So it's so much untapped territory.
Exactly. That's my point. Because it's like, say, take the comics and current things that are going on in the comics with Adam Brashear and Blue Marvel.
Right.
He was active during the 70s.
Yeah.
That would have been the perfect time that S.H.I.E.L.D. would have been established. Okay, there are superpowers now. There are people other than Captain America that are more powerful than him, and the world's in crisis. Something needs to stay under wraps just to keep civility
I mean, and that's the thing about it, is because with Agent Carter, the villainess that she had to deal with, that was the first, aside from Cap, that was the first enhanced. And that was way beyond. I mean, she tackled it very gracefully, but that was way beyond her realm of believability and stuff.
It really comes to show how much we don't know about the MCU.
Exactly.
And it's
when you bring that up now, I'm just really thinking about you're so right. We have so much untapped
areas,
just areas that we can just pull from now, which is even more exciting as a Marvel fan. You know what I mean?
But just to wrap things up, in brief, Antman definitely does an exploration of genres.
Yeah.
We see multiple genres throughout the film.
Yeah.
And on top of this, we see kind of two parallel stories of characters being told, one about passion and one about reversion.
Yeah.
And ironically, the reversion isn't about the antagonist, but the protagonist, where Scott altruistically starts off wanting to be a hero, reverts back to selfish tendencies, and then goes back to heroism to then at the end of his film revert back to selfish tendencies with going to Captain America by himself.
Yeah.
And it comes to show that with the parallel with passion leading to corruption. in the the 10 minutes we spoke about that.
Oh yeah, with Yellow Jacket.
Yeah, with Yellow Jacket. But yeah, that's really all I wanted to speak about today. On Antman.
Right.
So next video we will analyze Doctor Strange or Guardians, one of the two.
Still, two of my favorite. I mean, I can't say people because Guardians is a group, but two of my favorite like franchises. I love Doctor Strange. I'm a huge magic.
Yeah. And oh man, I can't wait to open up that can of worms.
I love space. On the DC side, I'm in love with Green Lantern and everything Green Lantern. So Guardians was really like. That's why I can't wait for a Nova movie.
Yeah.
Nova's gonna be flight.
Yeah. But thanks, brother.
Anytime, man.
Next time.
Always.
Peace.